Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the WCN seminar, or a webinar even, on making engagement the central focal point of your future talent acquisition strategy. We've got a great webinar planned for you with my colleagues Julian Ladd and Emrys Parry. We'll just give it a couple more minutes to see if anybody else joins us live, and then we'll get started. So please bear with us. Okay, let's get started with this afternoon's webinar, and a very good morning to anybody tuning in from the US. Our agenda today will look at a survey that we've conducted with global recruiters to look at what actually makes great engagement and what the big challenges are within the recruitment industry. And we'll also look at some case studies of how WCN clients deliver this and how great engagement technology can transform your recruitment. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping before we begin and I introduce the speakers. The lines are all muted, so please don't try to speak. We won't be able to hear you. You can use the chat functionality to ask any questions throughout the webinar, and we'll come to those at the end of the presentation, as well as some closing remarks for you to take home with you. Let me introduce you then to our two hosts. The first is Julian Ladd, who's Global Head of Sales and Account Management at WCN. Julian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Joe, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone that's joined our webinar today. So I've worked all but 2 of the last 20 years in candidate attraction recruitment for a few organisations, and delighted to be here to share just some of that the thinking that I've built up over that period of time. And I'll pass across to Emrys.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Emrys. I'm one of the account managers here at WCN. Just to give you a bit of background, my role here is to manage the commercial side and the relationship side with both our clients and some of our key strategic partners. I've been at WCN for just under 3 years now, and I spent approximately the same amount of time in recruitment.
Great. So I'll let Julian proceed and really tell you a bit more about who WCN are and what we've found.
Great. Well, unashamedly, just a little introduction. There we go, moving the slide on. Little introduction on who we are at WCN. So we're the leading globally recruitment technology provider. We help organisations rapidly find the best talent by better managing the entire hiring process. At the heart, we've got a number of components: speed, quality of hire, and candidate engagement, candidate experience, all leading to reduced costs to hire and time to hire. We've got some clients on the line, so very warm welcome to you today as well. But our client base spans the public and private sectors across pretty much most verticals, from financial services, consultancy, legal, through to retail, and then of course across the public sector as well. And just very proudly, we've been recently, this month indeed, we've been named as the most engaging e-recruitment provider in the marketplace. So we conducted some research, and we firmly believe that engagement should be the central focus of your talent engagement, talent acquisition strategy. Indeed, just yesterday I was speaking to an organisation who was now seeing over 100% increase in attraction in lower socio-economic groups, and that was a particular focus of theirs, just by adjusting and tweaking their engagement with that group. And of course it's interesting for those of you on the phones who might be looking to attract emerging talent. So we recognise, of course, that there are some common challenges in engagement of candidates, particularly when 84% of candidates will consider how quickly a company responds as a factor in their job choice. I mean, I think that's startling, 84% of candidates. So the research that we recently conducted across HR leaders covering almost 70 global and national employers, and that's just a snapshot there in front of you in terms of some of the organisations we spoke to, really looking to establish what engagement techniques worked well for them in recruiting, and of course where the challenges existed. So there are three areas that I'm going to share with you over the next few slides. Firstly, identifying what engagement is currently being used by these organisations, what challenges those recruiters were facing, and then lastly, which sources can be best utilised to engage with the very best talent before the rest. So firstly, the main recruiting challenges. So those first two bullet points there, the stretched staff resourcing and low brand awareness, are the primary challenges that organisations shared with us. 21% were struggling to engage with diverse communities to comply with their organisational objectives. So I'd really advocate speaking the language of your candidates in these talent pools. 20% found that they were losing out due to market proliferation and competition, and indeed 14% were also reneging on the offers, which was becoming an increasing issue. And interestingly, there's also growing trends coming across from North America for emerging talent. So these are first timers into the marketplace to be negotiating on their start salary. So that might be a trend to sort of watch over here. And lastly, the last bullet point there, 19% said low business engagement made winning over new talent difficult. So in this case, we really advocate and propose a digital-led employee value proposition really at the core of your engagement activity. So what about some of the successful methods that organisations were currently using to increase their engagement with candidates? Well, by far the largest valued was events being used as a big driver for engagement with talent, and associated use of social media outreach and forums and chats for candidate engagement. You know, part of your EVP, building in stories from a happy workforce are so powerful to share during that recruitment process. 64% said maintaining relationships with academics or senior directors and managers within the business helped with engagement. Your competition is really fierce, so engagement has to start earlier, and that's a trend that we're seeing, engagement starting even before university. So proactive communications is also important via social media, newsletters, careers pages, and the like. We'd also, the last bullet point there, 44% using brand ambassadors and mentors to run engagement programs and events. So the most successful recruiting sources that were shared with us to help inspire candidates through the journey, 70% said employee referrals were key to identifying top talent and those that should be engaged. 59% reported internships and placements were a good way to engage future leaders and that emerging talent pool. And there's over here in the UK, there's a phenomenal scheme, and if you don't know anything about it, delighted to share the details afterwards, that the armed forces and particularly the army have in place for those people that come into the end of their uniform service to go and actually work out in industry, still being paid by the Army, almost a try before you buy scheme. 53% valued careers fairs and open days and networking days as a useful mechanism for finding and then engaging with the best candidates. And 43% used mentor programs to aid recruitment practices. So I'm now going to pass on to Emrys to share some great client case studies on what's working within candidate engagement and some other future trends.
Right. Thank you, Julian. Oops. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to continue from Julian by firstly looking at the relationship between technology and great candidate engagement. I'm going to cover a bit about the future of engagement and also look at a case study that talks about our client Marks and Spencer's. And within this, we're going to look at how M&S have successfully structured themselves and how they've utilised technology to give every person, whether they are successful or not, a really, really positive experience. So, before we get into that, I'm actually going to start with a real-life example of engagement which highlights how a candidate can become easily disillusioned within the hiring process. And this identifies a number of things, but particularly that having engaging and personable recruiters might not be enough to ensure that the candidate gets a positive experience. So the candidate in question originally applied for a position on our client's website, but after they heard nothing from the company, so they tried to contact the recruiter directly, who they found using LinkedIn, as you can do these days. And while the recruiter accepted the candidate's LinkedIn invite, they didn't actually return their messages. Now, it later turned out that the role had actually been filled and the recruiter was focusing on the next vacancy, which is, I'm sure, a situation that everybody in recruitment has been in at one stage of their life. So finally, the candidate got a little frustrated and he went back onto LinkedIn, and this time he found the hiring manager. And he got a response from the hiring manager, and typically it said, please contact the recruiter. So this example firstly showed that there are many ways that candidates will try to engage with your company. It could be through the website or social media, or it could be through the external job boards that you're using, or even the external agencies that you're using, but all of which have got the ability to affect the quality of the engagement and have an influence on the person's perception of your company. So the company actually needed technology to be working alongside them to proactively manage this engagement piece with the candidate. And that was the area that we could help them to improve. So it's certainly worth a mention during this example that our candidates or candidates in 2016 live in a world of companies like Amazon Prime, for example, where you can order something and 2 hours later it can be delivered, or companies like Deliveroo or Uber or Tinder, where everything is accessible quickly and via your phone.
And Emrys, just to share that in terms of that candidate mindset, I saw a recent statistic that 64% of candidates, 64% are more likely to buy with same-day delivery, and they indeed take a similar approach to their job hunting activities.
Absolutely, and I think candidates and especially millennials are not patient within this process. You know, they expect things to work. There are lots and lots of companies that they can engage with at the moment where things work really well and they're really slick. So if things don't work, if your website doesn't work, if it's difficult to apply for a job, they will get frustrated, and this will often result in them giving up or finding something else to apply to. There we go. So what does this technology actually look like, and how does the recruiter fit into this world? So looking at this example, we can see that it's really important for your company to be proactively managing this. So thought is required as to how you want your candidates to feel following your process. And there's a very real impact in getting this wrong. So you've got to think that, are your unsuitable candidates going to have influence over your potential future hires? And this could be relevant if you are operating in a fairly incestuous hiring market or even in a graduate hiring market. Famously, the financial services firm Bloomberg got this quite wrong as a result of their culture over a number of years. And the knock-on effect of that is that they struggled to obtain the best talent beyond the graduate market. So our clients, such as M&S or John Lewis, are also very aware that candidates are also their customers. So John Lewis calculated that poor candidate engagement would put at risk 4.8 million in retail spend per year. So at the base level, what you are looking for is a consistent quality experience completely reinforced by your technological solution. You ideally want to focus as much human attention on the candidates that you actually want to work within your organization. And that's about giving those people a really special experience that infuses them and that secures them within your company over that of your competitors. So a really great example of this can be seen within one of our clients, M&S. So just to start with a bit of background, M&S required a volume hire solution on a huge scale. So they were tasked to recruit for their 798 UK stores and 455 of their international stores. So what they needed was 40,000 vacancies to be filled per year, and they did this with around about 225,000 candidate applications. So this really was one of the largest recruitment operations in the country. So further to that, they also didn't want their in-store managers to be bogged down with recruitment administration, and they wanted a consistent approach to happen throughout every store in the country. So at WCN, we designed a solution for them, and at the core of this solution is a 2-click process for the hiring manager. So the first click posts the vacancy and assigns the hiring manager's availability for interviewing the candidates. The candidate will then come along and they will apply for a vacancy via the WCN system. They will complete testing, and this includes the realistic job preview that we touched on earlier. The system will then determine if the candidate is successful, and if they are, it will allow the candidate to book an interview from the slots that the recruiter originally made available. The candidate will then go and attend the interview in store, and if they're successful there, the hiring manager will join the process again for the second and final time to make the second click to initiate the contract generation. So the system will then create an automated offer, which the candidate can electronically accept. The system will then collect all of the candidate's details, including their pay details, which automatically transfer into the M&S HR system, ready for the candidate to start. So from this process, M&S have achieved a typical 3-day time to hire, while simultaneously achieving a conversion rate of 1 in 2 candidates. So, WCN have identified that candidate engagement is also important during the application process, and we've developed solutions around this. So you can see on screen, and it's just to the right-hand side, there's a black box that says Martin, and there's a one underneath that says Follow Us WCN. And these are visual links that can be added and can include anything from company information to promotional videos to interview preparation guides, or anything else that you feel is relevant for the candidate to know about. Now, these adverts are also dynamic, so depending on where the candidate is within the process will depend what they see on screen. So a candidate going to an interview may see interview preparation guides, or a company promotional video, or even a guide on how to reach their interview location, while a successful candidate might see information on who their new boss is, or information on who is in their new team. So the idea is that every candidate feels engaged with the employer, so they believe it's a type of company that they want to work for. But it's also worth a mention that technology is moving so rapidly that understanding future engagement methods will be important when you're strategically planning. And before we jump into technology, let's take a quick look at what the future of the recruitment market is going to look like. And I think the key within this is that we're looking at a tough market at the moment, but it's going to get tougher. So what are we looking at? We're looking at more competition for talent. So McKinsey recently identified that as a result of baby boomer retirement, by 2020 there will be a global deficit of 40 million university educated workers. But we're also looking at tougher candidate closes. So as automation increases, finding candidates will become faster, and then the human engagement piece will become more important. So generally what we're talking about is more global recruitment, more automated recruitment, and faster recruitment. So what new technologies are WCN currently looking at to help with this world of future recruitment? So one of the most exciting and advanced areas that we currently have in development is around the utilization of big data. So at WCN, we're working with one of our financial clients to deliver a solution that will predict 40% of the client's hires purely on the information from the candidate's initial application. This means that we can tell a client before any sifting is done on the initial applicant pool who they will hire after their entire recruitment process is finished. And we've achieved this by building an algorithm that takes from over 300 data points on the candidate application form and then ranks the information based on a dynamic scale of importance. So the system will weigh up the information available and then superimpose it onto previous year's hiring information and make predictions as to who the next hires will be with a 90% rate of accuracy. So once technology such as this becomes commonplace in the market, the role of the recruiter to secure candidates through effective human engagement will become more important than ever before. And this isn't fanciful technology ready in 20 years' time. So WCN have this in development right now, and we're making accurate predictions right now. But this isn't the only exciting development in the world of recruitment. So video interviewing is another great example of the advancement in technology that directly affects the way in which we engage with our candidates. So in particular, WCN have helped communication services giant WPP successfully implement video interviewing, which was achieved through an integration between our platform and that of our strategic video partner Cameo. In this case, WPP were receiving about 2,000 applications per year, and the requirement was to whittle these down to about 250 video interviews and eventually about 100 face-to-face interviews. So WPP were looking for a solution that would give them more insight into a candidate's personality than you would typically receive on a standard CV. And they also felt that the standard method of psychometric testing didn't completely fit with their desire to find both bright and creative individuals. So, using the question, name 3 people you would like to take to a dinner party and why, WPP were able to get a really good gauge on the suitability of their candidates. So WPP have stated that as a direct result of their work with WCN and with Cameo, that they were able to cut the final selection process from several months to just several days. So looking at both big data and video technology, we can see how the challenges of future recruitment and future engagement can be alleviated using technology. Now, it's worth a note that developments around gamification or bot sourcing or Silicon Valley's push towards superstar graduate recruitment, while those topics didn't make the cut for this particular webinar, perhaps we'll come back to those at a later date and we'll talk about them.
Emrys, that's fascinating. What does the future hold then now?
So the future holds within, I suppose, within the video interviewing space. You really need to look at other industries just to see what's going on. And I think one of the most interesting things that we're seeing within this area is within the US military, who have recently built a system that can test soldiers for post-traumatic stress by psychoanalyzing them using video technology and which looks for things like movements in their face, in their body movements, in their tone and the pitch of their voice. And actually in trials, the system that was designed by the military was able to diagnose post-traumatic stress more accurately than a team of humans attempting to do the same thing. So things like that we're now seeing being pulled into the world of recruitment. So we're not seeing them on a large scale yet, but they are certainly within their infancy. But we do have firms, even firms that we partner with, who are exploring these technologies, and it won't be long before you'll be able to do a full interview just with the computer. So the computer will ask you your questions, and as you're answering them, it will be able to psychoanalyze you to determine your suitability, for the job that you're going for.
Great, thank you, Emrys. So as we draw to a close and conclusion, we've taken you on a whistle-stop tour today through sharing some of the research that we've conducted recently, and then Emrys sharing his thoughts around big data, video interviewing, and then areas for potential future enhancements. So in summary then, finding the best people who are your future business leaders across experience levels is essential, and we all recognise that. And you need to be prepared to do this faster and earlier in the future. And this is amplified by the fact that the war for talent is intensifying, and of course technology never stands still. So we'd really advocate further embracing your utilisation of technology to provide further intelligence, the use of video and associated psychometrics in the recruitment process. Hence there's a need to ensure you hire the best before the rest, and making engagement a top priority would be a really positive first step or enhancement to your process. So I'll leave you with 3 words before we open the lines up for any questions: speed, accuracy, and relationships.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That was very insightful, and lots of great tips there about how to really achieve great engagement and make it a key priority for a business looking to master talent acquisition going forwards. We've been running the chat for any questions throughout the presentation, and I'm glad to say we've got a few come through. So let me just start with one that's here. How do we best keep candidates engaged from application through to offer? Julian, do you want to take that one first?
Sure, I'll certainly start off. So, so for me, I think the use, appropriate use of career sites, so the use of rich media, video content, images and downloadable documents on your career site and throughout that candidate journey. The use of written testimonials delivered from the employee's point of view. Really that use of targeted advertising to allow the candidate to really visualize what it's like to work within your organization. So two things really, informative for the candidate and to really help him or her with that decision-making process as they move through that application process.
Yeah, absolutely. So and to further, I suppose, engagement comes in different ways. So what we're seeing now is a real push towards human engagement with an element of engagement through, virtual engagement through the system. But ultimately, when the system removes the administrative burden from the recruiter, they're able to spend more of their time engaging face-to-face or via the phone, or have that human-to-human engagement that's really going to draw a candidate to come to work for their company. So as well as the direct methods of engagement with the features of the system, there's also the indirect methods, i.e. all the stuff that takes away the administrative burden and allows the recruiter to have that really great engagement piece face-to-face or human-to-human with the candidate.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Another question's come through off the back of the M&S case study, and it's asking about speed and automation in particular, and how much can we really automate in recruitment?
Okay, so I suppose the answer to that is we can automate absolutely everything. No client that I know about, ours or otherwise, has ever been brave enough to automate absolutely everything, but essentially it can be done. I mean, we just need to look at the M&S case, like you highlighted, to see that there is only a two-touch process within this in order to get someone into a store. And within this two-touch process, they hire 1 in every 2 of the people that they see. So it doesn't take a big stretch of the imagination to look into the future, to look at concepts that we've spoken around big data and around video interviewing and even computer interviewing people as an advancement on video interviewing. To imagine that 1 in 2 is going to become 2 in 3 or 4 in 5. The computer will get more and more of these correct. But then, it's not going to come down to the process as it historically has done. It's going to come down to the human-to-human engagement. So really, this whole thing is around taking the administrative part away from the recruiter and making it more of a relationship piece to draw these people into your company.
Yeah, and just to add, I was with actually one of our newly implemented public sector clients recently, and they'd shared with us that their savings since November, pound note savings, had been £250,000. They'd saved a huge amount as well in paper, envelopes and postage. And, as important was the savings that they'd given back in terms of time back to their HR business partners involved in the process. And they were now able to deliver an even better service to the line managers and the rest of the organisation. So having a real impact and taking HR, up the value chain within that organisation.
Thanks. And maybe another question just on the back of advocacy and trying to look at how important it is for brands to really enforce a value proposition through their career sites and their online presence in this modern market.
I think it's really important. In terms of the candidate mindset, we have huge numbers. So over 51% of candidates, are mostly always online. 83% of candidates, sleep with their mobile devices, tablets, and so on nearby. So, to drive that employee value proposition through, through career sites, is hugely important. Emrys, I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that. No. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. At the moment, that seems to be all the questions that have come through, but do send through any more if you do have any, and we'll definitely look at those as we talk. That really does draw us to a close with this afternoon's webinar. Feedback is a very precious gift, and we would really appreciate it if you did send us your feedback. You will receive a summary email from GoTo afterwards, and you can send through anything direct to us at marketing@wcn.co.uk. And if you do have any other questions at all on this seminar, then Julian is happy to hear from you. His email address is on the screen, and a phone number for Julian and colleagues is also available online and on the screen. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We hope you have enjoyed this webinar and take from it lots of valuable tips on great engagement that can help to shape your strategies going forward. It really is a big, important matter for talent acquisition. We're very proud to have been named the most engaged e-recruitment provider by Corporate Vision magazine, and we're really hoping that we've triggered some thoughts in your mind to get in contact with us. But regardless, we hope you've enjoyed this webinar. Thank you very much, and have a very pleasant afternoon and weekend. Bye-bye.